just to get us off the mark, I would like to ask Cliff Byrne, Chairman of the Care Group in the IRFU Charitable Trust, to come forward and welcome you. Thank you. Cliff Byrne.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all here on behalf of the Charitable Trust today. I've been parachuted into this really at the last moment. I'm deputising for the chairman, John Callaghan, who had a medical intervention last week. Happily, he's doing extremely well and will continue to do well. He sends his best wishes, and I'm sure this will be reciprocated by all here. I would just like to make a personal apology to my friend John Osborne, who invited me to be on his table, but circumstances dictated otherwise, but I'm delighted to be here. John is involved with one of the happening forces in his own hometown. I think you might describe him now as the Roman Abramovich of Cashel Rugby Club. I would like to acknowledge with thanks the long-term involvement and commitment and sponsorship of Aon, who are well represented today by their Chief Executive, Richard Henderson, and his colleagues. You're all very welcome, and thank you so much. I would like to thank our own committee who organised this lunch, and particularly the girls, Sharon and Linda, who have been doing Trojan work, as always. Just a few words about the Trust for those of you who don't know anything much about it. It was founded in 1978. It's a subcommittee of the IRFU, receives administrative support from the Union and grant aid with monies from the sale of international programmes. We look after 33 seriously injured players. A committee member is assigned to each player. We try and provide pastoral care, mobility support in terms of chairs and cars, home adaptations, educational grants, technology support where required, and things like required gym memberships, even fishing licenses. And if additional medical care is required, we will try and organise this when appropriate. I'd like to welcome today three of the players who are guests of Ollie Campbell, Neil Finnegan, Jeff Hart and Donal O'Flynn. You're all very welcome. Sadly, two of our injured players passed away during the year, Joe Parker and Norman Ogilvie, and we remember both of them fondly today. We also lost the mighty Paddy Madigan during the year. With no disrespect to my fellow committee members, including myself, Paddy was the heartbeat of the Charitable Trust. He had been a member of the committee since 1978 and had only missed one meeting in that time through illness. Paddy's wife, Pat, is here today, and Pat, with Ollie, we wish you a great lunch, and it's fantastic to see you. Paddy, as you know, was a man of few words, but about once every 3 years he would, I can only describe as, go ballistic. He might bang the table and he would utter, "This is not what we were about." We had a recent Paddy moment when, at a meeting, one of the newer members of the committee mentioned a bucket collection. This was always a red rag to Paddy, and we were reminded when we looked around that this is not what Paddy would have liked or wanted. I can assure Pat, the trustees under the chairmanship of Ronnie Dawson, the previous hard-working chairman of the trust who are here today, and indeed all of you in the room, that the caring, under-the-radar, can-do ethos promulgated by Paddy Madigan continues and will continue within the Charitable Trust. And we would feel that this is the most appropriate way that we can perpetuate Paddy's memory. There are many guests here who are long-term supporters of the Trust, and we thank you all most sincerely. The legendary Jack Kyle is here. My mum remembers fondly Jack travelling to Ravenhill as a schoolgirl with her uncles to see Ireland clinch the Grand Slam. It's always nice to get people from abroad here. Victor Ubogu is here. Victor, you're very welcome. An Oxford Blue, an English international, and also a prop. Victor is polished, articulate, intelligent, good-looking and successful. Sorry, Victor, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I'm just quoting from your personal webpage. The Wallace brothers are here, and Michael Corcoran, who we're very grateful to, who's going to interview them afterwards. And indeed, we'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Sir Ronnie Flanagan, formerly a happy hooker, I believe, with CIYMS. I note that Ronnie, while studying physics at Queen's University, joined the RUC, as you do. If ever there was a case of a poacher turned gamekeeper, there it is. Ronnie, we look forward to hearing you speak, and you're very welcome indeed. Tomorrow Ireland face the mighty South Africans. There is a pre-match lunch as always, and in a new initiative, the IRFU invite one of our injured players to the pre-match, together with a member of their family. Tomorrow, 3 of our injured players will be present. Brendan Glynn from Cork, who never misses a match. Garrett Culleton, who's a member of the renowned Culleton family from Wanderers. A man who missed out on competing in his 4th Paralympics by 40 millimetres recently. And travelling from the north tomorrow will be Stanley Miller. Stanley does not yet know he's coming to the lunch, as his family didn't want to alert him to it yet. So they're going to kidnap him tomorrow, hopefully, bring him to the lunch, and they will stay overnight as guests of the IRFU. Stanley is 50 years and 5 months since he sustained his injury on the field of play. These are the calibre and the stature of the men whom you support by your presence today, and we are most grateful to you indeed. In times of recession, we will need your help more than ever. There are a number of events that will happen during the year: the O2 Ball and the Legends rugby match on the eve of the English match between the Irish Legends and the English Legends for the Mangan Cup. I wish you all a long and languid and happy lunch. And looking around this room today, I feel assured that the Irish rugby family, and indeed our guests from overseas, is alive and well. This family is alive and well. And I hope we'll have a most enjoyable day. And it reminds me of the words of W.B. Yeats: "There are no strangers in this room, only friends who have not yet met. Welcome and enjoy."
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask the other great Ireland out half, other than Dr. Jack Kyle, who's here today, Mr. Ollie Campbell, to say grace. You may remain seated.
Thank you, Mick. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome, and thank you for being here. Towards the end of my playing career, there was a rumour in this city that I was about to join the priesthood. To this day, I have no idea how this rumour began. The legacy of that rumour is that it has given Mick Quinn, of all people, the liberty to embarrass me at every opportunity ever since by asking me to say grace before meals. Mick added another dimension to this yesterday when he told me that I would once again be expected to say grace before meals here today. And then he said, and I quote, "Ollie, it's really about the only thing you're any good at anymore." Lord, thank you for the enduring friendships that bring us all together here today. Bless our injured players and their carers and loved ones, those that are with us here today and those that cannot be with us. Thank you for the food that we are about to eat. Bless those who have prepared it. Bless those who are about to eat it. And bless those in this country who are hungry today. And Lord, if you cannot bless him, we beseech you, in your infinite goodness, to at least forgive the many sins of Mick Quinn. Amen.
I'm actually quite fed up of these other Ireland out halves. Tony Ward once wrote in his book that he would have had 40 caps instead of 20 if it wasn't for Ollie Campbell. So I rang him up and I said, "Wardy, if it wasn't for Billy McComb, Mike Gibson, Barry McGann, Tony Ward, Ollie Campbell and Paul Dean, I'd have had 80 bloody caps." Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats for the formal part of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to introduce to you for the formal part of the evening a man who is known now as the voice of rugby in Ireland. And strangely enough, it's not from TV, but from radio. And surely this man has that voice. Whenever a Leinster, Munster, Ulster or Connacht team or the Ireland team performs, he speaks passionately about our game. And we in rugby appreciate the fact that he is so enthusiastic about the game of rugby. Sometimes he is known to go slightly over the top, especially when Munster are playing, and when he and his sidekick Donal Lenihan get carried away a little bit, maybe over a Ronan O'Gara drop goal or two. And he has been known to reach the heights of the Vienna Boys Choir when these things happen. But I would like to come forward and speak to you and introduce our special guests this evening for their presentation, for their contribution to rugby in Ireland. And that man is Michael Corcoran of RTE Radio. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. I'm wearing a black, for those of you who are colourblind, I'm wearing a black suit. And just especially for Pat Fitzgerald, this is not a Munster tie. It's a Stade Toulousain tie. They're a French club, you might have heard of them actually. And I'm wearing odd coloured shoes, but they're platform shoes that make me a bit taller than I actually am, so that's what Mick always had to tell me. Mick also wondered whether this was a Kerry banquet when we came in. But sure, when you haven't won the All-Ireland for a long time, you have to talk about the good old days, I suppose. How many? Yeah, but if you include the hurling, you've shag all, in fairness, like. We am going to that. 37? That's your waist size, is it? Yeah. Can I say, on a serious note, just get the serious thing out of the way, seriously, I was delighted when Mick rang. Well, actually I wasn't delighted when Mick rang because I knew he wanted me for something. But I had no hesitation whatsoever when he gave me the call during the week to know would I come along and have a chat with the lads. I think that the work that John Callahan and Cliff and everybody else does, and the work by extension that everybody here is doing by your support, is absolutely first class. And I have to say, and I mean this honestly, I couldn't think of a nicer place to be the day before a rugby international than sharing stories and slagging and everything with everybody who's here in this room. On a less serious note, that doesn't mean that I want you all coming up giving out to me about something after we finish, but I better carry on because I'm digging a hole for myself here, and it's not about me, it's about three very extra special rugby players who are being honoured here today. And I've had the pleasure of sharing dinner with them. 2 dinners in one of their cases, but I'm not going to mention anything, Paul. Apparently he described it as a snack. And apparently he's having his dinner at 8 o'clock. Anyway, enough about that, but it's the 3 Wallace chaps, and I can see their mum and dad there, and obviously they're desperately proud of everything they've achieved. So, in no particular order, I guess the most intelligent one is the most intelligent one is the man who I've had the pleasure of flying with him while he flew the plane. I just sat in the back on many occasions from Dublin to Paris, and that's Richard. So Richard, will you come up and take a seat, please? Then there's the next one, again in no particular order, apart from the number of dinners he's after eating, is the man who tamed the entire South African pack. Actually, I believe it wasn't just one player, but it was the entire pack at the time, back in the Lions tour, back in the day of black and white television, and that's Paul. As you can see, he moves quicker now than he used to do when he was playing. Sit down, would you? So, that's Richard, the pilot. And then you have Paul, who obviously is well known through a lot of the work that he does on Sky and various other corporate media ka-ching events that he goes to. And then, obviously, the 2 lads are here, the mum and dad sitting there, and then they wonder where it all went wrong. There's the baby, and the sweet shop man, David Wallace. Sit up there now. Hard to believe, isn't it? Fellow Lions, believe it or not, I play with the Lions as well. I was the media team, but... lads, was sailing always a big thing in your house when you were growing up?
Well, Richard was the
seriously.
international sailor, so over to him first.
Yes, it was. I'm delighted we're here to talk about sailing, actually.
So am I. Paul, were you interested in sailing?
Yeah, I was more for the ballast. No, we all did an awful lot of sailing from since we were knee high, and Dad, it was was manager for 3 Olympics as well, so that's where the international pedigree comes from. And we all grew up sailing, and I think it was our sport as big for us as rugby was, and as was a number of other sports we all played. But it was huge till I know personally there was a boat called the Laser that I was sailing in. The first big regatta I went to, when you're going upwind, the weight is an advantage. When you start coming downwind, it's a big disadvantage, and I was about a stone over the optimum weight at the age of 15.
Bullshit.
So I reckoned that I was going to stick with the rugby. There's only one way that was going.
So listen, thanks for coming. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So come here. How did the rugby start? I mean, were you a sailor as well? You always wore boat shoes every time I saw you.
I didn't have too many fond memories of sailing when I was younger, because Paul used it as I suppose, his time to get revenge on me. He was always a bit bigger than me and a lot slower, so I used to kind of hit him and run to mum and dad, and I was the younger kid, and he could never outfox me now. But anytime he got me into the boat, that was his time to slap me around the place, basically. So
it serves him well from giving a dig and then looking at the ref incredulously. It wasn't my fault. He did something first.
And come here. Who was the squealer of the 3 of you? Like, who was the one that
David.
went right to the parents?
I was the youngest, I had to learn. Yeah, probably was the worst, actually.
So what was it like growing up in a house, with such talented people around the place? It must have been incredibly frustrating for you, David, was it?
I've a lot to owe them, actually, in fairness. I kind of bluffed my way. I lived off the name for many years, so it was great. But no, I suppose people always ask that. Was it difficult growing up and having to I suppose the pressure of trying to achieve and make the Irish team or whatever. But to be honest, I learned so much from them. They made it very easy for me, and from the way I suppose my dad in the Olympics is learning from what he had learned from sailors, and then the lads getting into being professional athletes. Like Richard was professional before it ever was professional, and when he went down to the lines years ago, and he brought back loads of info and knowledge for me when I was very, I suppose, at age 16, that was very influential and helped me a lot. And then seeing Paul play with the Irish schoolboys probably just around the same time, it was massive. So I mean, it was a huge carrot for me, and I learned from the hard work and dedication that they put into it. I learned how to I suppose get on that rail.
We'll talk about the rugby in a second, but I'm just wondering how the dynamic worked, say, with the 3 of you. If you went out for the night, there was kind of Richard at one end, then there was Paul, and then there was you. I mean, did you get third choice when it came to...
Came to what? Drinks?
When it came to making your mind up, who was going home with who, or what was, like, did you have to pretend you were Richard, or what was the story there? Did you have not to shave, we'll say, for example, or what?
I was always slagged in school, alright, for, it was, I never said it, but it was always, I'm Richie Wallace's brother. It was always a slag in school, but, thankfully, never had to use it, getting into nightclubs or whatever. But.
What about you, Richard? Do you now have to pretend you're actually David Wallace?
Unfortunately, I don't really think anyone would believe that.
I mean, you were the fellow who set the pathway at the very beginning, in terms of what you were doing. I mean, did you ever think that those other 2 young fellas here were going to follow you? I mean, all the pressure was on you at right from the off, wasn't it?
No, pretty much they were wasters during school and as we were growing up. But I guess Paul was always a big guy, and particularly when he moved up after college to Blackrock and he hit the steroids big time, well, obviously then, he looked like he was going to be a bit of a star at that stage. And I don't know what happened with David, I think he was just a bit taller than us, and we left home in time for him to get back to the dinner table and get a decent helping, so I guess that helped.
Was food an issue? Was eating an issue for you when you were growing up? I mean, with obviously 2 other hungry brothers around the place as well.
Well, look at me, what do you think?
I did, you had 3 dinners,
Yeah, well, that's...
By the way, I met Paul for lunch on a Sunday and he was a bit late. This was about 2 o'clock he arrived. He'd just been to lunch and he was delayed.
A big food bill, obviously.
I just don't know where I put it.
Yeah, I don't know. You've a seafood diet. One of your doctors told me a while ago, if you see it, you just eat it. I mean, that's basically it. Sorry, I think, Mick, do you want to... Mick Galway, I think is just, if you bear with us a second here. Did you come up? You're going to contribute something there, I believe. If you can you get up? If you, I like... No, it's all right. It's not that this is your life moment, don't worry. You haven't seen her since Paris, 1994. Just give Malone the microphone. I believe you have a story regarding somebody you'd like to share. Yeah, it's working.
I have, yeah. Funny enough...
Now, Mick is a bit shy, so just relax here.
Try, lads.
Hold on, it's not the mascot
And
story
thanks again for the
is it?
balloons. It means a lot to me, by the way. But funnily enough, I was only thinking earlier, I actually played with the three Wallaces for Munster and Ireland. And I don't know, who else? Maybe Axel. Certainly not Claude, because Claude would have been playing instead of you, Paul, or whatever, you know. But I had the honour, and I mean this, I had the honour of playing with all the Wallaces for both Munster and Ireland. I had the great honour of playing with Richie for the Lions. We weren't on the first team, Richie, but we were part of the main team of the Lions trip in New Zealand in 1993. Richie came out as a late replacement, a great replacement, and I think we were the life of the soul of the party, but that's another story, says you. I've one story I have to tell about Richie, and of course I played with David, and I played with Paul, and of course they're forwards. It's easy to make up the forwards because they're big and they're tough, and you know, I wouldn't say stupid, David or Paul, but in fairness, Richie, 20 years ago, almost to the day, Munster played against Australia. Do you remember that one, Michael? Down in Musgrave Park. That was the fight, yeah. There was the fight, actually, yeah.
Bob Dwyer.
What?
Bob Dwyer.
Bob Dwyer, yeah. It's a long story, right?
Just come in the match at 5:30 tomorrow, would you?
Yeah, but it's a long story, but I'll tell you the short version of it, right? Now, Richie was playing on the wing, right? And Richie, as you can see, is a true athlete. Outstanding. You know, like Richie was ahead of his time. In fairness, as I always said, if Richie was playing today, he'd be probably playing for Leinster. But back then, in fairness to he was fast. He was fast. He was a finisher, and he never got involved in the rough stuff, right? So, Richie, well done. So you might remember back in 1992, exactly 20 years ago, the 21st of October, give or take a few days, 21st of October in 1992, Munster played against Australia in Musgrave Park. And we were a bit peeved because we were the midweek match, right? Leinster had got the Saturday match the previous week, and Ulster were getting the next match, and then there was the test match. This is back in the amateur days when someone like New Zealand or Australia would come and they'd play all the provinces, and then they'd play the test match. So we were the midweek match. We were a bit pissed off, to be honest, because we thought ourselves we deserved the Saturday match. But look, such was life in rugby back in 1992. So we had a good team. Now, when I say we had a good team, it was a team that was picked for the occasion, right? On the front row, you had Peter Classie, you had Terry Kingston and Paul McCarthy. They wouldn't be great athletes, but they'd be tough lads. Now, you had a few athletes like myself and Dick Costa, and if you were, we were in the second row. But again, to make a long story short, Michael, because he's kicking me here. Playing against Australia were the world champions at the time, and they were a fantastic team. So we were under pressure. So at half time, we were down, right? And the match was very dirty in the first half. They had a fellow called Sam Scott Young playing big forward for them. He'd taken out Dan Larkin, who happened to be the out half. So at half time, the war cry came in. Now, when you hear a war cry from Peter Classie and Joe Classie and all these lads, and they said, lads, it's going to blow up in the second half. Now, this is long before like CCTV and the whole lot where we can, you know, citing commissioners and God knows what. This was the amateur days, believe me, right? So the war cry came out at half time, lads. It's going to be a fight, lads. It's going to be a hassle, and it's all going to blow up. And the most important thing we do as a team, this is Munster, we all get stuck in. Nobody stands off. Is that right, Richie? nobody hangs off, right? This was the most important thing. So everyone to a man, like, and when you have young Munster fellas telling you they die for you, you know they're serious, because the previous 10 years that I played against them, they wanted to kill you. So you knew we were onto something good here, right? So the game was going to blow up in the second half, so we said, Jesus, we better be careful. So lo and behold, we're running across the pitch. Peter Claus, he trips one of them, and the whole thing bursts up, right? And Richie happens to be out in the wing, like way out in the wing, the far wing, right? And there's a bit of a schmozzle, like, but it's handbags really, but the whole thing blows up. And even Philip Danaher, who played in the centre, who, by the way, will be playing today before playing prop, but he got stuck in, everybody got stuck in, right? And no sign of Richie. So we looked around, right? And there's Richie coming, sprinting, the fastest man on our team. By a long shot, Richie. The fastest man on our team is sprinting in, and we see Richie, and we said, oh, Jesus, there's fire in his eyes. He's mad looking. And we never saw Richie like this before. Is he heading for Bob Dwyer? What is he going to do? He passes out, he actually passes out where the scrap was. No, he's definitely heading for Bob Dwyer. And he heads for the sideline, right? Oh my God, we were thinking, he's going to kill somebody. Lo and behold, we see Richie. He's not going to dig someone, he's going to kick them. Richie Wallace kicking someone, can you believe that? So Richie Wallace draws the boot back, and next thing we see it, going through the air, the big, fluffy, cuddly kangaroo. The mascot. Richie takes out the mascot. And that's a true, and you know what? That is a true story. You mightn't believe it, but it's true. So lads, I'll leave you at that. But on a serious note, great to have played with all the lads. I cycled them there a few months back with great crack, but they've been a credit to Munster, Leinster, Saracens, whoever. But they've been a great credit to Irish rugby. Well done, lads.
Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, Mick. Apparently, Mick is the second story, but he can fill you in the bar a bit later on. Paul, do you have a favourite David story?
Well, just looking at the photo there's a picture of the three of us when we toured in '98 to South Africa. That one there, just off the plane, not from a night out. And we, as the tour went on, we had a court session, and I think Golliv was tour judge, and the fine was for bringing your family on tour. So we got handcuffed, and these were no Mickey Mouse handcuffs. They got them from the police, and there we were, handcuffed together. Now this is where David showed how naive he was on tour. He left Migo one side, handcuffed to him, and Richie on the other side. So he's got no hands free. So anytime he went for a drink, it was away, and half the drink went all over him. It was even worse when he went to the bathroom. I'd gone all night, but anyhow, we eventually got them off somehow. I can't even remember how we got rid of those handcuffs. Certainly not by key.
Richie, sorry, you've been silent one for a second. Do you have a favourite brother story? Either of the two now. I mean, everybody's picking on poor David here.
Yeah, I know, but he's easy, isn't he? I suppose following on from that tour, we went on a little holiday. Five of us, the three of us, Mallow Kelly and a friend of ours from Saracens. And I remember flying back into Joburg with David in the back of a plane after a particularly heavy night out. And he was trying to get me to get sick, into a sick bag. And nothing was happening. And he was laughing his head off at me anyway. And we were sort of halfway through the descent. And next minute, David grabs to the sick bag. And,
fills it.
I didn't know what to do with it at the end of the flight. And he asked me what was the best option, and I told him that he should bring it up to one of the air stewardesses and ask her to look after it for him. And I don't know why, but he actually did.
Oh, David. Now, David, have you a story you'd like to share about probably the two of them, actually, because it's all against you at the moment, isn't it?
Pressure then, eh?
No. Go on, far away.
I don't know, but two of them. I do. We were talking about it there earlier about Claremont, Paulie. We're in a nightclub, and I think Paul, you were probably getting a bit sleepy or something. So I decided it was time to bring Paul home. So eventually, I convinced him for about half an hour. Right, we'll get him home, and then the cab came, and it was about an hour trying to get him into the cab. Every time a cab came, he was in one door, out the other, and then back around, and then trying to get back into the nightclub. So. Literally, I think a group of lads came out, so we all piled into the cab, eventually got him in, so, about 2 hours later, eventually got him into the cab, and that's it, we're getting Paul home, and that was it. So, lo and behold, cab pulls out of the hotel, Paul, bang, straight back into town, off he walks. Never saw him again for the rest of the night, but, Paul's a bit of a night owl.
In my defence, Jeremy Davison had me drinking pastis, which is very difficult.
So what about the flowery shirt you were wearing? Because you have a habit of wearing flowery shirts every time. No?
Yeah. Well,
you lost luggage sometime in Italy. I think you arrived. Your bags didn't a couple of years ago. Remember? And you did flowery shirt
for the Irish Legends.
Yeah, it wasn't reversible. I think you had it on for the entire weekend. Actually, it was one of those ones.
Yeah, I was coming from a conference down in France and flying direct to Italy for Rome for the Irish Legends, which I was involved with as manager. God knows why. We arrived in, and it was the equivalent of the Italian Ryanair. No bag arrives. Everyone speaks Italian. Can't get anything through my mobile. The battery's gone. So eventually, that's it. I just go off to the hotel. I've left an address with someone from Alitalia, which is the same as giving it to someone at Aer Lingus for a Ryanair flight, expecting never to see my bag again. And met Jeremy Davison, had what I can explain as a blouse. Yeah, a big flowery blouse, which he gave me, and no one else would lend me any clothes for the rest of the trip. And 3 days with that sweaty blouse on.
Sorry, remember that? Yeah, we were there that night. Sorry. Rich, if you have a favourite rugby memory from your playing days, come on, you haven't got Alzheimer's now, friends.
I'd say my favourite playing memory was to do with this hotel, actually. We had gone through a bit of a losing streak in my early days with Ireland, and we broke the duck and then followed it up with a victory here over England in '93. I remember walking into this golf in the corner, I believe, yeah. And sorry, golf. Didn't realise you needed another plug for that one. And I think that was probably from where we had come from to reaching that pinnacle at that stage. That was just for a Lions tour that England had. Pretty much the full first choice team and half of their A team in the Lions tour. So to beat them here, it was 17-3. That was a big day for us, big day for Ireland, and probably my fondest memory.
Paul, the Lions, was that one of the highlights of your career?
Yeah, it would have to be. I think winning a Lions Test series. Unfortunately, I was never in a very successful Irish team, which I'm sure could have eclipsed that, like some of the guys who were winning Grand Slams. But for me, internationally, that was certainly it. There was a few other things, like winning the Cup with Saracens when we were over there. The English Cup was a big thing. For Leinster, winning the Celtic League against Scotland in the inaugural year, when we only had 14 men as well.
A one-legged
but
prop.
with Gallup, they only had 14 as well.
Did you have a one-legged prop as well?
David, you're of the more recent vintage. A highlight for you? Heineken Cup, Grand Slam.
Yeah, I suppose playing for your country and winning the Grand Slam was I suppose the highlight. Everything that went around it, then the welcome we got when we came home, and the fact I suppose it was 61 years in between Grand Slams. It was fantastic. The luxury of meeting Paddy Reid there last night, and that's something I was at, and it was great to see somebody from the previous Grand Slam, and that was a special moment. But it was it was hard to topple that, playing for your country and winning something great like that.
Just a question for the two older boys. Paul, tomorrow, Ireland, South Africa.
I think it'll be one of the biggest wins for Ireland. I think even though South Africa have 7 frontliners, Ireland have 6. I think it's the strength and depth that South Africa has. that in some ways, in some areas, they might even be a better side. I think with the quality of players that Ireland are missing and the leaders, for all of them to be out at the one time, I'm a bit nervous, to be honest. I think South Africa might overpower Ireland. That's what I'm a bit nervous about. But it looks like an exciting attacking side. And South African teams, when it starts getting cold and a bit of dew, sometimes they don't play to their best. But Ireland have shown that they've won 3 of the last 4. But I think South Africa would have to be favourites going into this.
Richard, do you agree?
I do, I think, unfortunately. But, whenever we're down mainliners or headliners, like the 6 or 7 guys that aren't playing, and you look at that poster over there, and 3 of the 4 of those guys aren't playing tomorrow, it's going to be a tough ask for Ireland. I'd like to see a higher tempo game out of Ireland. I think it's the way forward. If we can achieve that and compete, then I'd be happy with that, I think, tomorrow. But I think a victory is going to be very difficult for us.
Okay, lads, listen, we can stay here for a long time, but we're not going to do that because we have to go. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, your mum and dad must be absolutely delighted with the 3 of you. Are we putting your hands together for Richard, Paul, and David? Hold on, before you go, Ronnie Dawson is here at some table. Ronnie, sorry, excuse me, hurry, I didn't know what table you were sitting on. Will you come forward? I think Ronnie's going to make a presentation to the 3 lads. I think they're actually getting a bit of glass each rather than sharing it, so.
My simple duty is to thank the Wallace brothers.
Second.
Is to thank the Wallace brothers for gracing us with their presence today and for their parents. I don't know whether you all realise it or not, but the situation of having 3 brothers on Lions teams is unique. It never happened before, and I doubt it will again. On behalf of, by the way, one was a wing 3/4, one was a flank forward, and one was a prop. But Paul has always insisted he was the fastest, and I have to. Anyway, on behalf of the Charitable Trust, and particularly on behalf of Aon, who, again, I am very grateful for their excellent sponsorship of this function, I would like to make this presentation to them in thanks and in recognition of their contribution to rugby football at club, at country, and for the Lions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ronnie Dawson, former captain of the Lions and captain of Ireland. Ronnie Dawson. And thank you to Michael Corcoran for doing our interview for us. Michael Corcoran from RTE, thank you very much. Richard, Paul, and David Wallace. Thank you, Ronnie. Could I finally ask Dr. Jack Kyle to come forward, please? I'd like him to make a small presentation to Richard Anderson of Aon in thanks from the Charitable Trust Committee for their sponsorship once again of this lunch. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Jack Kyle. Richard Anderson. That's Dr. Jack Kyle and Richard Anderson of Aon. Thank you very much to Aon for their sponsorship and their great support of the Charitable Trust.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Jack. The great Jack Kyle. Ladies and gentlemen, our final and keynote speaker is a man that needs no introduction. A former CIYMS and Ulster player who played hooker for Ulster. He has been a friend of the Charitable Trust for many years. He now is living and working in Abu Dhabi, but he came here to lend his presence to our function today. He's a great supporter of the Charitable Trust. He was the last Chief Constable of the RUC and the first Chief Constable of the PSNI. I would like to ask Sir Ronnie Flanagan to come forward and address you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I say a word, can I say how moved I was by the previous tribute to the Wallace family. What a dynasty in Irish rugby. And we have had dynasties. We have had the Murphys in Munster. We have had the McKibbins in Ulster. But I was moved by the fact that here we had sons representing Ireland. I have a number of sons. I don't have daughters. That's the way things work out. But I would just actually like to say, and I hope I'm not going to embarrass the lady, and I'm certain I am, but I would love Mrs. Wallace to stand up and be acknowledged. Please. Please. If your family is a bit like mine, as I suspect, Dad is the driving force. They may have loved sailing, all that, blah, blah, blah. But Mum, I suspect, is the one who made them what they are. So, wonderful. Anyway, I now begin my speech with Mr. President of the IRFU. And that reminds me of a totally embarrassing situation I had when I was a relatively young captain of CIYMS Rugby Club, which was, believe it or not, a serious rugby club in those days, All-Ireland champions and all that nonsense. So as a young guy as captain, I was very nervous about making a speech. If you think I'm nervous tonight, well, really, at my stage, I'm only nervous with intelligent audiences, so I'm not nervous tonight. The last time I was really nervous was when Belfast City Council were having a debate as to whether a television kids group called the Power Rangers or the President of the United States should switch on the Christmas tree lights. I kid you not. And it was only when I said, as Chief Constable of the police service in the North, I couldn't deal with the public order situation if the Power Rangers were to do this. Only then did they say, okay, let's Bill Clinton switch on the lights. So I've had a lot of situations with presidents of different organizations, of different countries. And when Clinton was replaced by George Bush, I met him. And at one stage, his aides told me he prepares for his speeches with such detail. In fact, He's about to open the Winter Olympics in Vancouver, and he wants to prepare for this months, even a year in advance. And when he has time, he will go to a podium and he will have a speech written by speechwriters, and he will rehearse this. So the first time he rehearsed it, he came to the podium and he said, "Oh, oh, 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 oh." And immediately an aide walked forward and said, "Mr. President, those are the 5 Olympic rings." Just watch the prompter and your speech follows next. But when I had this debate with Belfast City Council about Clinton, then I knew what to expect with Bush. And I knew what to expect with all his Secret Service agents. And oh my God, they're talking up their cuffs. And they decided that they would take him to a little primary school in Belfast where American money had created an IT suite, a little computer suite, and they thought it would be good. Mr. President, Mr. Bush, you should go and just thank them and hope that your investment in their IT suite is working out well. So I was an invited guest. In fact, I had opened this suite, believe it or not. It's called the Flanagan Suite, even though the Americans paid for it. But we went on this occasion, and the kids started to question him when he got up in the assembly room and he said, "Children, I am Mr. George W. Bush. I am the President of the United States, and I'm really only here to say I hope you have had good use of the computer suite that we have provided for you. But my real purpose here is simply to offer you the opportunity to ask questions of me, the President of the United States." And a wee hand shot up at the back immediately. A wee Belfast guy, "Mr. President, I am Jimmy Muskimmin. I am 7 years of age, and I would like to ask you a question. In fact, my father is the president of the Boilermakers Union, and he always told me to ask at least 2 questions, so I have 2 questions for you. And my first question is this, but before I would like to ask it, I would like to thank you for giving us this IT suite, and I would like to thank our teachers for teaching us to Google this and Google that. And I've been Googling in this suite, and you're supposed to be the leader of the free world. I would like to ask you the first question. How can you justify that intervention in Iraq with that Prime Minister of ours called Tony Blair, when actually there was no evidence from the UN interpreters that they were making nuclear weapons, and you decided we'll go in, and you did this without a second UN resolution? That's my first question. How did you and that man Tony Blair lead us into that war, that ill-begotten war that I'm, according to what I'm Googling and the equipment that you've given me? And the second question is, you're supposed to be the leader of the free world. How can you justify this place, Guantanamo Bay, where you take people and you put them in boiler suits and you keep them there for weeks, months, years, and you don't even put them on trial? I find this, Mr. Ridiculous, to be honest. And suddenly the bell rang and all the kids, go back to your classes, go back to your classes. And all the kids are taken back to the classroom. And after about 20 minutes, and his aides are saying, oh, you should deal with this, you should deal with that. So they all come back in after about 20 minutes. And he says, kids, I'm sorry for that disruption. that, as I said earlier, I am the President of the United States, and I am here to give you the opportunity to ask me any questions you would like to ask. And so please feel free. We handshake up the back. Mr. President, I'm Jimmy Miskimmon. I'm 12 years of age. I'm Freddie's older brother. And I have 2 questions for you. And the first one is, how come the dinner bell went off at 9:30? And the second one is, where's my wee brother? My background, I'm not sure everybody in this room knows it. My background is, I'm a cop. I was the last Chief Constable of the Royal Ulster Constabulary and the first Chief Constable of the Police Service of Northern Ireland. I was responsible for the transformation in making the difference. So if you want to leave now, go ahead. But all I ever wanted was peace, understanding, reconciliation. And in truth, I'm so sorry that my dear friend John Callaghan, who is chairman of the trust, is ill, and he wrote me a letter to say that he couldn't be here. But my rugby club was CIYMS, and we have 2 cherished colleagues who receive help from the trust. And the trust does such work that we should all be proud actually to be here tonight and encourage the work of the trust, because it's rugby is a game that I am currently amongst a number of functions that I fulfill. I live and work in Abu Dhabi. If you don't know where that is, it's the capital of the United Arab Emirates. You all probably know Dubai. That's coarse, it's vulgar, it's cheap. Abu Dhabi bails them out when they run out of money. But they are so supportive of rugby. And we have rugby teams out there. That big bollocks, Delalio, recognize this. I'm telling you this is true. He recognized this. So last year, he actually had a premiership match with points at stake in the premiership to be competed for in the Emirates Palace Hotel in Abu Dhabi. And they invited the 2 teams. I can't even remember which team he played for. Was it Harlequins? No, it wasn't Harlequins. Who? Wasps. He grew up there. In fairness to him, he left that school and he went to Wasps. But Abu Dhabi invited them both out, paid for everything, put them up, East Wing, West Wing, and created a rugby pitch, created a stand, created floodlights, and they played a premiership match. So I'm just sending out the message here. Take a little lesson from that bollocks to Lalio. They love Ireland. When Mickey Quinn, Mickey, how did you become so big? Because I sent him photographs when Mickey and I played in a celebration of 50 years of, believe it or not, Enniskillen Rugby Club. And Mickey was playing for the Wolfhounds with people like Jean-Pierre Rive, the late great Mossy Keane, Andy Ripley, an incredible team. And I was playing for a strengthened Enniskillen team with Ronnie Flanagan and Harry Steele and a share of other tossers. But we played out a 13-all draw. Anyway, my point is, rugby is a unique sport. One of my jobs at the moment is that I am chairman of the International Cricket Council Anti-Corruption and Security Unit. 2 weeks ago, I was centrally involved in the policing of the Formula One race in Abu Dhabi. A couple of years ago, I wrote the chapter on policing and security for the English Football Association's bid for the 2018 World Cup. They only got 2 votes. I promise you it wasn't anything to do with my chapter. My point is, I have seen the governance of world sport at close hand. And I'm not going to criticize that governance. But what I can tell the people in this audience is that in world rugby, we have much to be proud of. I think we have managed to achieve that transition from the amateur game to the professional game. We need our sponsors, and can I congratulate our sponsors and thank our sponsors tonight for the night being possible. I simply say that I think of the world governance of sports that I have had opportunity to observe. Rugby, I think, maintains a special place in managing that recognition of a world professional sponsorship game, but recognizing the needs of individuals. And in recognizing the needs of individuals, nothing for me does more than that, than a charitable trust. Because most of us in this room, have had the privilege of playing the wonderful game. Some of our dear friends and colleagues, sadly, sharing that privilege, have experienced tragic accidents whereby they suffer for the rest of their lives through the wonderful game. And the Charitable Trust recognizes that, and in a discreet, understated way, keeps contact with them, speaks to them, asks the questions, how can we help you? We don't want any publicity, we don't want to make a nonsense of it, we just want to know, how can we help you? So the Charitable Trust is something. I'm a friend, but my tie is in Belfast, and my wife is on the, she might even be here now, she's on the train down from Belfast with my tie for tomorrow's match. And I'm so proud to be associated in a very small way with the Charitable Trust. I have seen these other sports, Formula One. There's my wife and my wee man Adam. There they are. I have seen, she's given me a sign. Does that mean shut up? Or Mick, have I got another 10 minutes? Am I okay? I have seen these other world sports at first hand, and I'm not going to criticize them. They're wonderful in what they do, but of all these sports, cricket, soccer, Formula One, rugby for me maintains a special place. And that special place is, of course, we recognize the realities of the modern professional world, but never will that recognition remove us from the needs to recognize the needs of individuals. And in that course, the Charitable Trust is supreme. It's unrecognized in any other world sport that I know. So it's just an absolute privilege for me to be here tonight. Now, okay, I've talked about rugby, but my background is policing. I was waiting for. But I talked about presidents, and I've met many presidents. And on one occasion, I met President Mary McAleese after a rugby match. And I met her with big Mossy Keane, the late, great Mossy Keane, because I don't know if everybody in this room knows, but Mossy shared a flat here in Dublin with President Mary McAleese's husband, Martin. They studied together, and Mary came down and cleaned out the flat. She did. All I'm telling you is, I'm not here to plug Mossy's book, but read Mossy's book. And on one occasion, after an international match, I was invited to Arsenal for a dinner. And the president had no idea that I knew Mossy Keane, that Mossy Keane knew me. So she was doing very formal introductions. She said, "This is the chief constable of the Royal Ulster Constabulary." And Mossy patted me on my bald head and said, "Ma'am, President, the last time I stuck my boot in that, there was her on it." This is actually in his book, Rucks, Mauls and Gaelic Football. And the president was so shocked. But that's what rugby does. That's what I would say no other sport actually can do. She thought she was making introductions to people from totally different worlds. And through rugby, she actually learned there are people who have a world in common, and that world is rugby football. I am here tonight because of a sort of an average out half, Mickey Quinn. Does anybody know Mickey Quinn? When I first played for Ulster schools against Munster schools, there was a guy called Barry McGann. I don't know where he is now. Is he still here? Is he alive?
Still around.
And then on one occasion, when I went on to play for Ulster against Munster in a decider for the Interprovincial Championship, we had both beaten Leinster and Connacht, and here we were in Thomond Park playing for the Interprovincial Championship. In those days, we only played about 5 matches a year. And all these bollocks who said, "I've played for Ulster 100 times." In our day, Mickey, you only got about 20 opportunities, am I right? Anyway, I wouldn't be impressed by these people who paid for their province 100 times. But this particular match, it was a very tight game. Mike Gibson happened to be our captain, and believe it or not, he was taking the kicks. So we won a penalty. He kicked it 3-0. Barry McGann won a penalty 3-all. Gibson 6-3. McGann 6-all. And then we had this bollocks called Eddie Grant on the wing who intercepted a pass. He was a great sprinter. He couldn't tackle his granny, but and he scored a try under the posts when tries were worth 3 points, which was easily converted with only 10 minutes to go. So I have to admit to you, the audience tonight, I had this reputation of being a bit of a mouth as a hooker. So I would talk to the opposition, So I was hooking against Pa Whelan. Phil O'Callaghan was one of his props. And we had the game won. We had only 10 minutes to go. Grant had scored this onto the try post. 3 points converted to 5 points. We were 5 points ahead. And I said in this scrum to Pat, "Pat, did you ever hear this wee song? We are the champions." And he immediately broke up and headbutted me. In front of John West. Now, I don't know if John West... And of course, the referee's waiting for the ball to go in. And a riot broke out. But Pat was sent off the field, and we won the match easily. In the dressing room, in those days, you know, you didn't get jerseys. You played in them and you handed them back. And a big bollocks from Belfast called Dinky Dalton from Malone Rugby Club, he said to the late Henderson, who was our president of the Ulster branch, "We've won the championship, can we keep our jerseys?" And Noel said, "Okay, okay." I'm told the Ulster branch said to Henderson, "You're going to have to pay for these jerseys." How the world has changed. And then when I went with the Irish B team, in the Irish B team in those days, there was a very simple criterion to make you eligible. And it was simple. You need not have a full cap. You could play for the Irish B team if you hadn't played for the Irish full team. And that made the B team a wonderful mix of old bollockses like me who were never going to make it, but young, wonderful, up-and-coming kids. So I went to France with the Irish B team, and the up-and-coming kids, there was Patterson, remember that wee bollocks from the north? They went on to play for Kieran Fitzgerald, who captained the British Lions. Another bit of a bollocks, I would say. But a wonderful mix of teams like that. But in the mix of this, there was one wee guy called Joey Miles from Malone. And at the end of the match, believe it or not only did we have to hand in our jerseys, we had to hand in our socks. What the hell did they do with Irish socks handed in? Anyway, Joey Miles decided to deal with my roommate. And my roommate was Donald Spring. So Donald was one of those up-and-coming young guys. And in fact, in the room, he received a telegram from his big brother, Dick Spring, who went on to be Tánaiste. And the telegram he received from Dick Spring was in Irish. It was just one word, the opening word of a poem from Blind Raftery. Now, only the clever people in this room will know what it is. But the line was simply this in Irish: "Now at the coming of spring." And of course, Blind Raftery meant the season of spring. What Dick, who was in America in those days, meant was, you're a youngster, this is your opportunity. Now at the coming of spring, blah, blah, blah. But Big Donald, who we played against every year, this bollocks McQuinn and all these Lansdowne people, we knew them inside out. Joey Miles, who wanted a French shirt, because the French team came to us wanting to swap everything. We had nothing to swap, we had to hand it back. And Joey said to Donald Spring, and Donald, I think he's probably now a reasonably successful lawyer, but he pretended to be, he could speak French. He said, I don't know what this translation was, but Joey, a wee Belfast man, said, Donald, will you translate to this French guy for me? And the French guy wanted to swap his shirt. And Joey said, Donald, tell him I can't swap this shirt, but if he gives me his French shirt, when I go home, I will send him an Ulster jersey. Go ahead, Donald, translate that. And Donald is a big Russ. Okay, did you tell him it has a lovely red hand, it has a lovely shirt? And Donald said, oh, le mal rouge. And Joey's asking him, how's it going, how's it going? What did he say? And Donald ended up saying, he says, do you think I'm a fucking idiot? I'm getting a signal from my wife, enough is enough. Should I shut up and 2 minutes? More. Okay. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, John Callaghan, your chairman, can't be here. He sent me a letter. He reminded me that our club has 2 members who receive tremendous help from the Trust. He reminded me that our mutual mentor, Ernie Davis, was a great supporter of the Trust. Indeed, when he died, he left a legacy within his will to the Trust. So I'm going to wind up just to say it is a wonderful opportunity for me to be here with you and to share in a small way in what the Trust does. But I'm not going to finish without reminding those who know me and telling those who don't know me that poetry is one of my greatest loves. And within that, William Butler Yeats is the greatest love of my poetic life. I was once asked to attend a Burns supper and propose a toast to the lassies in Glasgow. And when I said I was delighted to be here to honour the second most wonderful poet in the world, I think I was thrown out a window. But William Butler Yeats is someone whose work I adore. Of course, he chased this woman, Maud Gonne, for all his life. He proposed to her. He pretended, because Maud was actually wedded to violent Irish Republican politics. And it seemed to me that old William Butler, in order to impress her, tried to suggest that he was tinkering at the edges. And of course, in 1916, she refused his proposal for marriage. She accepted the proposal of Major John McBride. She married Major John McBride, who was immediately executed after the 1916 uprising, after which I think William Butler reassessed the importance of politics in life. It was to me it was almost as if he was saying, I want to impress her, but not that much. So as he approached the end of his life, he had won the Nobel Prize for Literature. He was a member of the Senate, the upper house. He was attending a very important political seminar in Dublin. And he wrote a poem to record that called Politics, in which he said, how can I, that girl standing there, my attention fixed on Roman or Russian or Spanish politics, for here's a clever man who knows what he talks about, and there's a politician who has read and thought, and maybe what they say is true of war and war's alarms. But oh, if I was young again and held her in my arms. On a certain date in 1978, I was playing for Ulster against Lancashire at Ravenhill with Stuart McKinney as the captain. And at half-time in those days, you didn't leave the field. The captain had to address the team, and Stuart said, right guys, you see this Lancashire back row. Every time they go down on the ball, they kill it. And the referee is doing nothing. The first opportunity in the second half, I'm going to get stuck in, and I want every member of the pack to get stuck in. And then suddenly his eyes lifted over the crowd. And we all, what's he looking at? And there was a beautiful young woman walking down the promenade at Ravenhill. And Shirley says, would you look at that beautiful bit of stuff? I said, Shirley, what about the Lancashire back row? And he said, no, that's powerful. Look at that. I said, Shirley, did you ever hear of William Butler Yeats? And as we stood there discussing English literature, suddenly the referee's whistle blew, and we were into the second half, which we won, by the way. But the point is, everybody should prioritize in life. And William Butler Yeats, having decided where politics should pay the price and where he should prioritize, Shirley McKinney, actually, he prioritized. But surely, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if anybody in the room, ever bought his book, Cries from the Back of the Bus. It was a wonderful book because he was at the funeral of our friend Davison from Dungannon, Captain Darland, who coached Ireland. He died. And he was with big Charlie Murda from Portadown, and they started to tell old stories. And Murda said to him, Stuart, if we don't record these stories, they'll be lost. So Stuarty decided he would write this book, Tales from the Back of the Bus. And his wife, Siobhan, or one of his wives, she kept pestering me for a story. And the story she wanted from me was an absolutely true story. That match, when I was known as a hooker for talking in other hookers' ears and chittering away, we were playing Thomond Park. As I told you earlier, we had each beaten Leinster and Connacht. And I happened to say to Pa Whelan, Pa, did you ever hear this wee song? We are the champions. And he broke up and headbutted me in the presence of John West, the referee, and a riot ensued and he was sent off. So McKinney wanted that story from the back of the bus, which I missed because believe it or not, I was rather busy. I didn't have time to send it to Siobhan. He's now writing for Christmas, Roars from the Back of the Bus. I'm serious, this Christmas. I'm not here to advertise, but if you find it, it's worth it. It's a Lions. So I said, I will contribute this story, which is a true story. Twickenham, England, France. I went as a guest of O2. I didn't want to be photographed because they'd say, did he take these tickets free or did he? When you come out of Twickenham, you have free buses, double-deckers galore. You fill them up and they take you to the nearest tube station. I got into this double-decker bus and I looked down the underground and there was a rowdy middle-aged English supporters. France had beaten them 9-0. That wee scrum half had kicked 3 penalties and it was dreadful. But to the left, there were a couple of young French supporters dressed in all the French gear. So this loud-mouthed English guy said, there's a seat for you, move over, let this gentleman sit down. I took the seat. As soon as I took the seat, the young guy in all the French gear said, are you Ronnie Flanagan? I said, yes. He said, my father is Ken Kennedy. He lived in Paris with his girlfriend. His young brother had come over, they'd all got together. They certainly weren't going to support England, they were supporting France. They were all dressed in this French gear. So I sat down, and this drunken, middle-aged Englishman started the tirade. Oh, these French, they were lucky. I said, look, would you shut up? These are not French. In fact, this guy's father was the best hooker I ever played against. Forget John Cantrell, Leinster tosser. Forget Pa Whelan, Munster tosser. Forget Kieran Fitzgerald, Connacht tosser. In terms of hooking, only not in terms of their forward play, but tossers that I knew. Anyway, so this guy kept mouthing. I said, these are not French. This guy's the son of the best hooker I ever played against. His name was Ken Kennedy. And the drunk said, oh, Ken Kennedy, was he a doctor? He's not as good as John Pullen. What about J.P.R. Williams? If I was sick, should I call on Ken Kennedy or should I call on J.P.R. Williams? I said, a bollocks like you should call on Dr. Harold Shipman. So, sorry. My wife keeps saying, wind up, time to finish. And I'm going to finish. But I say, But I'm going to finish with this. I'm going to finish with this because this is the most serious point I want to make. I have seen Formula One at close hand. I've seen international cricket at close hand. I've seen international football. I wrote the chapter on safety and security for the English FA's bid for the 2018 bid for the World Cup. I promise you, it wasn't because of me that they only won 2 votes, but rugby, for me, remains the special sport. Rugby, for me, remains the sport that recognises the needs, and I would like to congratulate Eon and our sponsors for this evening. We recognise that, but we retain the need to support individual members of our game who fall on hard times. William Butler Yeats once was walking round the Municipal Gallery in Dublin, and almost by accident he came across a row of portraits of his former friends. And he was so moved by this. Most of them by this time had died, but he was so moved by the occasion that he wrote a poem called Municipal Gallery Revisited. And in the last couplet of a rather lengthy poem, he poses the question, think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say, my glory is, I had such friends. My glory is, I have had such friends through rugby. I've had such friends through tonight. I appreciate that more than I could ever adequately express. Thank you for that glory.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Ronnie Flanagan, thank you very much indeed. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. You'll never walk alone. If you walk out of there alive, you'll be lucky. Oh, Mick Galway. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you for taking part in this. Have a nice evening.